Reveal thyself, reveal thyself, reveal thyself, reveal thyself, reveal thyself, reveal thyself. Hello friends, Nayanswami Hriman here, speaking to you from the Ananda community in Linwood, Washington, just north of Seattle. This is our weekday broadcast of unpublished writings of Paramhansa Yogananda, and I'm going to continue with my theme of reading some of Yogananda's poetry. And today's poem is brief, and it's entitled My Lost Music. No ear hath heard, no thought hath held, no love hath felt, no dream hath dreamt, no tongue hath told, can ever tell of that my beloved music. But behind the curtains of everything I felt the lost and found beloved music of my soul. We are born to seek happiness. We have the happiness of childhood, for example. But beauty, which represents a kind of harmony, I remember 1975. I left my job. I was just out of college a few years, and I had left my job and went with my best friend. We went to Europe. He bought a brand new Volkswagen van, which, in the 60s and early 70s was the thing to do, new or old, and we were going to tour Europe. We found Europe a little bit boring, to be quite honest with you, and heard from travelers, hitchhikers, and so on, that you could actually drive to India. And as we were both meditators, we went to India. But during that time, I continuously wrote in a series of journals, all of which have been lost ever since. Maybe that's okay. But I remember my very first entry into my journal, which was probably even before we got to Europe, probably en route. We took one of those then popular chartered airlines, Icelandic Air, I think from probably San Francisco to Reykjavik or something like that, and then on to, what's that little country in Europe where they always landed on a grass airfield back then? Luxembourg? Anyway, whatever it was. And so my first entry in that journal was to ask the question, what is beauty? And nobody would confuse me with an aesthete so far as artistic tastes are concerned. I suppose my taste goes more to music, but anyway, for reasons unknown to me, I had never asked that question before that time in my life. I was 24 years old, I guess. And but that question has, in its own way, been beneath the surface. And when I think of the human longing for all sorts of things, beauty includes human love, human beauty. It includes the beauties of nature, the beauties of man-made art. These recent years I've just been stunned, partly based on a recent trip to India, 2 years ago, just by the immense beauty of the architecture and statues, etc. in India. And years ago on my trip to India, overland, I remember the beautiful art of the Muslim, the deep blue colors and the yellow and the gold and all the geometric shapes. So this question really goes down to, like this poem, My Lost Music, is there something that we have all lost that we, when we make a mistake. I remember Swami Kriyananda making a comment that on the body of a famous gangster, Dillinger or something, way before my time, generation in the 30s when the gangsters were, shall we say, popular. And was a note that in this body beats a loving heart. Of course, the gangster had killed all sorts of people, I suppose. But, even when we do things wrong, we're quick to forgive ourselves. We're quick to excuse ourselves. We're not so quick to excuse other people, but nonetheless, there's just something in us when we're fighting a disease or dying of cancer, or, there's just something that finds failure and discomfort and ugliness, violence. We find that as foreign to us. It's just not right. And so there's a deeply embedded sense of harmony, which can be called beauty. Beauty is harmony, and harmony is beauty, I suppose. Somebody must have said that famously. If not, I claim it. In any case, so it's this longing for perfection is another way of putting it. In one of other Yogananda's poems, it was a poem that I was looking at in my selection here today, and he talked about, as yogis have down through the many centuries, how the human experience of the state of sleep is very instructive to the contemplative mind, because in sleep, I was going to say whether dreaming. Well, you can have nightmares in dream state, but in the deeper dreamless state, we're always happy. Now, the problem with that argument is we're also not very conscious. but yet, as the yogis have pointed out, and others, when we wake up, we know how we slept, and we know that we enjoyed our sleep. Yogananda says that in the dreamless state of sleep, actually, I guess during the subconscious state, all segments of it, our energy, our consciousness resides within our body in the lower three chakras, is how, for those of you who are chakra-centric. In any case, in the dreamless state of sleep is when we experience more of the soul, our non-egoic state. It's still consciousness. It's just that the ego that we think of as I doesn't seem to be present. And of course, that's what makes it enjoyable. Was it Mark Twain who said that travel is a fool's paradise because wherever you go, there you are? That's been said in different ways by many wise people. But the problem with life is I'm there. With all my likes and dislikes and my aches and my pains and, all of the troubles that I carry like baggage everywhere I go, all the unfulfilled desires. And like the famous musk deer, that seeking the source of that beautiful, fragrant smell, which resides in a pouch in its belly, but it doesn't know it. It can even leap itself in its madness to find the source of this fragrance, can fall over a cliff and die. Well, we're like that musk deer. We are all seeking something, and it takes many flavors and different forms, gluttony, food, and whatever overindulgence in sex is called, seeking money. I mean, there's just so many ways by which our seeking, eventually taken to extremes, gets perverse, doesn't it? No matter what it is, if it occupies the center point of your life, it becomes ugly, it becomes disgusting, etc. And so the things that we enjoy in this world have to be held in check in order that they not destroy us. Isn't that curious? And yet, where does this impulse come from? That's what I'm talking about. It's this, my lost music, the music of the spheres. In yoga, we talk about it as the Om sound, as eminently blissful. And yet, if you try to describe the sound of the chakras or of Om, it doesn't necessarily sound eminently blissful when you put it in words, but it is deeply comforting. And it's access to that higher causal realm of all-knowing, the Akashic record, some people call it, is that sphere out of which all things come. And that sphere is by its nature deeply loving, joyful, blissful, what have you. It is from which all things come. So, this question of why is of course one of the big questions one gets all the time. Why is this? Well, you will know when you will know. Some rishis will tell us, but it is certainly a fair question. I was given a book for Christmas by Jamna on Mount Everest, and I am one of those who love mountains, and I've climbed a few little ones. I haven't climbed Mount Everest. I'm not going to this lifetime. And I remember John Krakauer's, telling of the incident in 1996 where the overcrowded traffic caused the death of, about 6 people, and that happened again in 2019. But that why, and it reminds me of the famous quote about Mount Everest, and I think it was Edmund Hillary. I'm not sure. He did an American tour to promote the British expedition to be the first to make it on top of Mount Everest, and the book was called The Third Pole because different countries had beat the British to the North and South Poles, Americans to one and Norwegians maybe to the South Pole, I think. Edmundson was his name. Anyway, so the third pole, the name of the book, was Mount Everest. British had, World War I was over, and they were desperate to express their manlyhood or something, and so the British funded an expedition to Mount Everest, which failed. First failed one was 1921, but the one in which Hillary and the other guy's name died was 1924. And on a tour to raise funds for the 24 expedition in America, Hillary was famous for, when he was asked by a reporter, why do you want to climb Mount Everest? And he said, because it's there. And there's a little squirrel wagging his tail at me. He's looking right at me. And so when we think of why did God create the universe? Because he could. Because it's there to be done. Look at that squirrel. He's got a whole big mouthful of bushes in his mouth, and he's staring at me across the fence there. Hey, bud. And so these questions are hard to answer, but it's like that seeking of beauty. You see, it's there. It's there to be done. You go to Florence and you see the statue of the David. That David was contained in that block of marble, is what sculptors tell us. I can't imagine it myself. It's way beyond me, but it was there to be done. And this is a real dichotomy, because we're born and we're here to do things, okay? And you could, say things like it's your karma and your dharma and all that junk, but it's simply there to be done. And it has to be done. Therefore, do you see? Those people who climb Mount Everest, when I went to Europe and then was inspired to go on to drive overland to India, it was there to be done. Do you see? And so this is the great duality, the great drama between that which doesn't change, the real me, and that which is compelled to change, including nature, which has its 4 seasons and the weather changes every day and this and that. Change is, you can depend on it. And so beauty, harmony, contentment, bliss, these things are there and to be done, to be found. And like that, we are all musk deer, and we are compelled by the very nature of consciousness in this world to go there, to find it, to seek it. And yes, it's right within us. But it's not so easy. We can seek it in both directions. We can't transcend the world of change until we embrace the world of change. Unless we accept it all, become one with it all. This is this three-stage rocket of samadhi, Om Samadhi, meaning communion with all the creation, and then communion with the Spirit at the heart of creation, the Christ, the Krishna, and then finally we ascend. But we can't get there by rejection. We can only get there by expansion. We can only get there by acceptance. We are driven, so drive on.